So, how does a country solve a problem that affects 120 million of its own people? For Nigeria, the answer isn't just on the ground, it's way up in space. We're going to break down their absolutely ambitious plan to leapfrog over the digital divide.
Here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll see how this whole thing changes a single life. Then, we'll zoom way out to see just how big this challenge is for the entire nation. After that, we'll dive into the incredible satellite tech making it all happen. We'll look at the early wins, some of the hurdles, and then wrap up with a really big question. Could this be the blueprint for connecting all of Africa?
Okay, I want you to imagine for a second that you're a farmer out in Kaduna State. Without the internet, you're basically flying blind, right? You have no idea when the rains are coming or what your crops are actually worth at the market. You're cut off. But then, you get a satellite connection. All of a sudden, you've got real-time weather forecasts, you can check digital markets to get the best price, and you can even get online training. I mean, this isn't just a small upgrade. It completely transforms your entire life.
And that farmer's story, that's really our jumping-off point, because it shows you a fundamental truth here. For millions of people, being connected isn't a luxury. It's an absolute lifeline.
Now take that one farmer's experience and multiply it by this number, 120 million. That's how many people in Nigeria are still on the wrong side of that digital divide. Just to put that into perspective for you, that's more than the entire population of Germany. It's a staggering number. So that massive number is what we're talking about when we say the digital divide. It's this huge chasm that separates the connected cities from the more remote, rural areas, and it creates this deep, deep inequality of opportunity. And this is the problem Nigeria is trying to solve, from space.
So, let's scale up from that one farmer to this massive national challenge. And what's so fascinating is that this isn't some brand new idea they just came up with. Nope. Nigeria's ambition in space goes back decades. They launched Africa's first communication satellite way back in 2007, and now they're hitting the accelerator. In 2024, Eutelsat rolled out a cellular backhaul service, which is basically a fancy way of saying they're using satellites to connect remote cell towers to the main network. And looking ahead to 2025, they're bringing in the latest low Earth orbit satellite tech. This shows a real, long-term vision.
All of this history, all this work, it's all led to a very concrete strategy, the National Broadband Plan. And the goal is to connect 20 million Nigerians right off the bat.
So, what's actually in the plan? Well, the goals are crystal clear. First, connect 20 million of the most underserved people. Second, supercharge huge sectors like healthcare and education. Third, directly attack that gap between the cities and the country. And finally, get the private sector involved to help build this new digital economy.
And you can feel the commitment from the very top. The ministry itself says this isn't just about laying cables or launching satellites. It's about driving digital inclusion. In other words, it's about leveling the playing field for millions and millions of people. Okay, so we've covered the why, but what about the how? Let's get into the tech, because this is where it gets really, really cool. It's this really clever three-part strategy. Think of it like a hybrid system. First, for the cities, you've got a massive 90,000-kilometer fiber-optic network as the super-fast backbone. But you can't run fiber everywhere, right? So for the rural areas, Nigeria uses its own satellite, NigComSat, for broad, reliable coverage. And then here comes step 3, the real game changer. They're bringing in partners with cutting-edge low Earth orbit satellites, or LEOs. Now, because these LEO satellites are way, way closer to Earth, they deliver much faster speeds and less of that annoying lag. It's a smart approach that uses the right tool for the right job.
So the strategy is ambitious. The tech is impressive. But the big question is it actually working? Let's look at the signs of this digital dawn and see what kind of impact it's having on the ground.
And the first big number to look at is this one, 3 million. That's how many people in rural areas have already gotten internet access because of this program. That is 3 million lives that now have the potential to change, just like our farmer in Kaduna.
The impact on healthcare has been just as dramatic. By making things like telemedicine possible, the program has cut the time patients have to travel for care by a whopping 40%. That means less time and money wasted on the road and quicker access to doctors when it really, really counts.
And you see the same kind of powerful effect in education. Schools in these newly connected areas are reporting a 30% improvement in student performance. Why? Because they finally have access to e-learning tools and digital resources that were just a dream before.
Of course, a project this big is never going to be perfectly smooth. There are still hurdles. The cost for people to get the actual equipment they need to connect is still pretty high.
And just as importantly, there's a big need to boost digital skills so people can really make the most of this new connection.
So with these early wins and those challenges in mind, let's look to the future. What could all this mean, not just for Nigeria, but for the rest of Africa? And really, here's the crucial takeaway. By blending fiber on the ground, its own national satellites, and this cutting-edge LEO technology, Nigeria isn't just solving its own problem. It raises a fascinating question. Are we watching them create the blueprint that could one day connect an entire continent? Now that is a powerful